So I am very excited to be here with Mike O'Connor, who has had an extremely varied and exciting career in the automotive world. And I think it's fair to say one that many people would be extremely jealous of. So, Mike, you have had a really exciting time with Formula One cars, buying and selling memorabilia, and also making fabulous sculptures and art out of the parts. But I think what I'd love to learn, and the viewers at home, is where did your love of Formula One come from in the first place?
Well, that is a funny story, as many of them are. And strangely enough, this coincides with my divorce. I have an engineering company, and we work building off-grid infrastructure for electrical and water supply around the equatorial belt around the world. Had a good, successful year in 2015, and instead of buying a house, I bought the Benetton F1 team, and didn't tell my wife. Motivation behind that was I used to do a lot of track days on motorbikes, and my wife at the time she was pregnant, and I thought it was time to grow up, and I'd pushed my luck enough on motorbikes on track, decided I was going to go on four wheels, and these things escalated. As she said, I should always have a breathalyzer put on my laptop, but I went on eBay to buy a Clio 200 Cup, one of the flappy paddle, relatively new at the time, budget about 20 grand, and woke up on a Sunday morning to that familiar eBay ping, which said, "Congratulations, you've won Arrow's FA15 Formula One car." So I had to hide that from the other person on the other side of the bed. And it escalated from there, really. I went to go bought this beautiful Arrow's FA15, still one of the prettiest cars we've ever owned. Very sleek shape, the 1994 car, in profile, probably not much different from a Jordan 191 or something, known as the prettiest cars. It was, it escalated from there. We bought that. I went down to pick it up in a really cool way, actually, with an my E39 M5, still best car I've ever owned, with a tow bar on it. The in-suspension in Ipswich had never seen a tow bar kit for an E39 M5, but they fitted one. And I borrowed the cattle trailer from the farm, and I went to go down and pick up my first Formula One car.
Amazing.
And then drove it around for a while. We did some demo runs for a company called Force all around Europe. Fantastic. Didn't get paid for any of it, but we would go to the Spanish Grand Prix and drive before the race, and all the shipping and logistics were all taken care of as part of the package, along with the VIP entertainment and things, so we could go out on track. None of this with a race license, by the way. And we go out on track, parade around, make some noise in front of the crowd, go as fast as we possibly could, which was nowhere near up to in the envelope of the car, and then come back and stand by the bar in our race suits and be cool.
Amazing.
It escalated from there. 23 F1 cars later, and here we are. So
that is so cool. So when you went to these places and you did, as you said, drove in front of all the people, did you have to have any kind of lesson on how to drive a Formula One car? I mean, I've been on a Formula One simulator, and that was tricky enough for me.
The only thing I struggled with was the complete lack of mechanical sympathy.
Right.
In order to get it to move, and viewers probably seen that very extended version of Richard Hammond trying to drive a V10 Benetton. Growing up with classic cars, or they were just called old cars when I was driving them, and over revving anything would be a problem. Clutch slip, you'd cook the clutch, everything else you'd have to drive very carefully. Everything that I learned from the first car was simply hold it at 12 grand and slide your foot left ways off the clutch, and something exciting will happen. Either light the back tyres up or it'll go bang. And thankfully,
neither of those things happened.
One went bang, out of quite a few of them, but off we went in a smoky start that looked cool, but was completely out of control, and up through the gears and you're off. And we had a fantastic time, and nobody ever actually asked if we had an international race license to be on track. And I was on track with some fantastic people, even at one point with Zach Brown. I steered clear of him, but he is fast.
Wow.
He was in his lovely Mika McLaren, and we were tracking a Silverstone Classic with him. I think he lapped me twice in 4 laps. Fantastic. Really, totally unexpected world that has changed quite a lot now, but since in 2015, 16, 17 when we were there, was just fantastic.
I mean, how did it feel to like really let the F1 car loose? Because I'm guessing, have you been able to do it very much here? Is there any kind of spaces where you're allowed to? But
We were allowed to.
You were?
We're based at Bentwaters, around the corner, and we used to hire the runway there every now and again to go up. If you're rebuilding an engine or a gearbox on the car, we'd have to run it up through the gears, just up and down the runway. But the noise regulations now,
Right.
and we had an incident where we raced a helicopter just for fun, and that didn't go down well. But so we're not really allowed to do that anymore. But in terms of driving the cars on track,
Yeah.
altogether, I mean, an absolute dream. Obviously, I had the most recent one was Checo's 2011 Sauber Ferrari that I kept for quite some time. It's gone to a new good home in Germany now, and I was at Zolder, sorry, and just had a moment of clarity pulling out of the pit garage into the pit lane with my friend Warren howling past in his TG 185 Benetton with huge back tyres, 1,000 horsepower, spitting flames, and my mechanic said, Mike, warm up laps, 2 laps, just drag your left foot on the brake, got to get the brakes up to 600 degrees or they just won't work. And I was, yeah, right, fair enough. That was so hot, strapped into the car, sweating, balaclava on, head restraint, everything, really claustrophobic. But it's a modern car, so you literally, the tub is up here, you can't see very much, and it was 35 degrees. And I'm thinking, right, drag the brakes. I'm pulling down the pit lane and just had a moment of, Mike, you're never going to be here again, this is amazing. Flick the visor down, just as Warren went, boom, howling past. He was on about lap 10 of his warm-up, and just the red mist came down, and I forget everything that the mechanic said, howling out the pit lane. I got flagged, shouted out for going too fast, like still pit lane, howling off after Warren, and I'm like, my car's 18 years younger than yours, or whatever it was, and chasing after him. Warren is a far better driver than I am, and very capable on warm tyres and warm brakes, and I came around as the track layout. They put a chicane into the back straight at Zolder, and I just straight lined it. I hit the brakes, and nothing happened. Literally nothing happened. And the brake pedal was rock hard. The brakes were ice cold. And when people say that carbon brakes don't work until they get up to temperature, they really don't in any way at all. And I was crashing, just that there was nothing in front of me. And there's a photograph that was, I think it made the paper over there, of me hitting the sausage curb and about 2 foot of air under the car. And like there was a joke written in the newspaper article about the wings being fitted upside down, but luckily it was written in Dutch, so it didn't get to England. And I came crashing back down again, and thought I'd wrecked the car, but went back out, pulled into the pits, got them to check it over, everything's fine. Another 15 minutes left on the session, so they were like, go. And amazing experience, but the car was just so much more capable than I ever was.
Right.
That every lap thereafter, I was begging for the black and white flag. I came out battered and bruised. It was so tight in there because a lot of the drivers I'm not a big guy, but a lot of the drivers are very, very slight. So I'm banging my elbow against the inside of the tub here, which is annoying for the first 2 or 3 laps. Absolutely black and blue by the end of it, bleeding underneath. There's a resistor under here with a cooling pack on it, which has got sharp fins that again you wouldn't hit if you were F1 driver size, but it was scratching my elbow, and then got out, my suit was covered in blood and things. So I was absolutely exhausted. But that was the last time I went on track in one, because it was almost humiliating that the car's laughing at you. And I went back into the pits at Zola. It was my birthday actually, and I tore my rotator cuff in the crash as well, so that was aching. I was being miserable. And I came into the mechanic. Luckily, my girlfriend at the time, I just undid my helmet, and there was an ice cold can of beer came down here. She was like, "There you go." So brilliant.
I needed that.
And push it back into the pits and things, and there's all the cooling ducts and everything, all the fans and everything on it. And I'm getting out, sweating. And Matt's just like, "What happened?" I said, "The back straight. I just hit the brakes. You told me I need to warm the brakes up. I ignored you. I'm sorry. It's my fault. What have we wrecked?" And he said, "Nothing's fine." He said, "But the suspension has potentiometers on it. They go from 0 to 10, about where the front, so it knows, so the car knows where all the front wheels are." He said, "I've never seen it before, but we've got -4. He said, "They don't go to -4. They start at 0, they go to 10, but you've got -4 on the front potentiometers." And he said, "How much do you weigh?" I said, "About 82, 84 kilos." He said, "You put 190 kilos of pressure through the brake pedal." So I was hanging off the steering wheel, held the brakes so hard, and still nothing happened. But F1 cars are phenomenal, but anyone that would listen, that is thinking of buying one to drive, just buy a Formula Ford and have some fun in it, because the F1s are brutal. And the acceleration is one thing, and when we used to run up and down the runway and things, cars, they accelerate quickly, but that's not what they're about. They're about stopping and cornering quickly.
Yeah.
So you're running on a runway, you don't really, particularly in open space, you don't really get a sensation of how fast they are. But the braking is literally, I detached a retina, had a...
Oh no.
Just because I wasn't used to it, and it would stand on the brakes when they were hot again, on the second session, and detached the retina. So you still see perfectly, it didn't hurt or anything, but it came in and I've got a completely bright red eye, just for the brutality of driving it. And I'm just admitting that they beat the hell out of me, and I wasn't good enough to be driving it, but it was a good experience.
So an amazing life experience, but not as glamorous as it may seem.
Not as glamorous as, no, unless you, And for Lewis to get out of the car, or any of the other drivers to get out of the car and still look as clean and refined and compass as they are, it's just so physical, so physical. And I didn't have the strength for it. We did probably, I think, 11 laps at Zolder, and I was crying, just looking to come back in again. I was like, I appreciate this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but I've kind of had enough now.
Oh my goodness. But it's so good to know that as well, though, because we see all these things on telly and we hear people talking about it. And yes, okay, it's very, very dangerous sport that they do. But to hear from someone who, you enjoy it and you have an amazing time, but like kind of an average guy who's not racing all the time, to have that experience, it's really kind of mellowing, I guess.
It was literally like going to a shooting range in California and saying, "I don't want to fire anything except the 50 cal pistol." And then you pull the 50 cal pistol, you've never fired a pistol before because we're English, and it blows your hand off and shoots off backwards, and it's very embarrassing. It was like, well, yeah, that was the ultimate, but kind of maybe we should have built up to that. But I never did. So we had a lot of fun in the cars, but they are absolutely brutal. When you see these internet arguments about whether Formula One drivers are actually athletes, unbelievable, unbelievable. And you see that it was at the where was the race? The Qatari race, was it that recently this year, where the guys were passing out through dehydration in the cars, and it's getting to the point it's dangerous that they're almost blacking out while they're driving. And let alone, I forget who it was, but in the pit briefing, in the green room afterwards, where they're waiting to go on the podium, the guy's asleep on the floor because he's just so dehydrated. It's a very, very, very physical that people don't really understand. You can wander around in a fast car, but it's just nothing compared to the physicality of a Formula One. I haven't driven one for a long time. I'm too old now.
It's great to hear from Mike and his experiences on track with the Formula One cars that he's had over the years. We've got some experience ourselves with race cars, not to that level, but I remember particularly we had a Chevron B20 race car in our possession for some time. We helped recommission that, and that's gone off overseas now, I think, to actually be restored and raced again. And we're regulars at Goodwood. We often go to Revival, we go to members meet quite often as well.
Look a little longer to feel confident, and also with the track drying out, but Top Gun, they seem to work out. Sort of larger pastures, but it's great to see.
have been on lots of adventures that involved F1 cars. And did I see that you did the Gumball rally?
I don't know how much tape you've got left. And the first comment in the video will be from one particular friend of mine who was like, "Oh, Mike, have you done Gumball?" ? Because I talk about it for months on end. It is, I'm a father, I have a little boy, and I'm supposed to say that the day he was born was the greatest day of my life. But I think probably the 7 days we did 3 Gumballs, 16, 17, 18. 17 we did the full rally. 16 we took Sauber to Dublin, and then into central London.
I have a question about Dublin. So when I was looking on your Suffolk Fast Instagram, I noticed there was a situation that happened with a policeman in Dublin.
Yes, yeah, that was very friendly, very friendly. He was the chief of police, and we were hired by BetSafe, the Betson group, that they were one of the sponsors of Gumball. And literally 3 weeks beforehand, and I've been a huge Gumball fan, and we're doing some work for them, and they said, could we run a Formula 1 car on the start of Gumball in the centre of Dublin? And I'm a huge Gumball fan. Max is old enough to be able to call Max and Lee the friends now, the guys that run it. But to be asked to bring a Formula 1 car to the start line in Dublin, of course. And so we did. And we're there, and there's all these. It literally is as gloriously bonkers as you imagine the start of Gumball to be. And I was in the car next to a DJ, Major Lazer DJ. I didn't even know who he was, but the song was #1 at the time, as somebody pointed out to me afterwards. And so there we are, at the start line of Gumball in Dublin. My friend Butts is driving the car, and we had to do a sort of a stig on it, because the story was that we would launch through Dublin, disappear off into the crowd in a Formula 1 car.
Amazing.
And then, just because we had 2 of them, we had an identically wrapped one pre-placed in Manchester.
So it'd be like, how did we get there so quick?
Yeah, exactly. So we were ahead of everything. But Gumball is just the most fantastic network of people. And I had a surreal moment that we blew the gearbox to pieces about 100 yards after the start line. So we got the shot we needed with the back tyres alight on the start line of Gumball. Then the gearbox let go, and we luckily just coasted round the corner and pulled into the side. And the driver got off, and we had 2 G-Wagons that we were driving as well. He jumped in there and was off, and I was driving the race transporter. And just a surreal moment. We went from Dublin to Belfast, and then a ferry across from Belfast to somewhere into northern Scotland, really in the middle of nowhere in northern Scotland. And we're on this ferry, and I've got the pulling in, and it's just surrounded by all liveried up Lamborghinis and Bentleys and every crazy car you can imagine, Gumball Apollo, and some fantastic things. And I've got the race transporter open, and there's oil running down the back of it. And I'm on my own. My friend Andrew, my business partner, his wife actually had a baby the day before, so he justifiably excused not to be there. And we've got the back of this open, and there's a crowd of people standing around that, even though they were really important, interesting car fanatics, they'd never been that close to a Formula 1 car before, but it's a bit sort of bread and butter to me at the time. I've got bits coming off, and I'm chucking bits on the side, and it's like, no, it's not going to run. We can't fix this. And one of the guys, who turned out to be a Middle Eastern prince, said, standing next to me, he said, Mike, so what do we need? I said, I need a gearbox casing for a Sauber C30. I probably own the only ones there are, unless there's a machine shop in Switzerland that has still got the original casings. Blah, blah. I said, we just can't do it. We're not going to do it. Shouting at his PA must have had the most difficult job in the world, back to his PA, and she was tasked with finding me a gearbox casing. And then this guy kept coming up to me afterwards. He goes, Mike, will this one fit? I said, no, that's a Manor Marussia one, but wow, no, I don't think it won't. We can't get it in time. And then someone explained to me that he was a crown prince of the Middle East who was just genuinely, it's like our Prince William standing in the back of a ferry to Scotland.
And he was like, no, we're making this happen.
On the phone to PA. And I must have had 10 people on their phones trying to make things happen. Just the community is amazing. And then halfway through the Irish Sea, everybody was like, hello? All at the same time, and everyone went silent because the phone signal cut out from Ireland and Scotland. But it was amazing. But yeah, that was good. And then we got the other car from Manchester into London, and I technically, as I set off from Edinburgh at about 4:30 in the morning, won a stage of Gumball in a race transporter from, not that it's a race, it's a rally, from Edinburgh into London. And we closed Piccadilly and Pall Mall for the race, for the finish line of the rally. And we pull in, and the policeman's literally standing in the middle of the road like this, and I've got this huge long wheelbase Iveco Daily with a 40-foot race transporter on the back of it, driving into central London. And the policeman standing there, "Can't come down here, mate." And I was just like pointing to the Gumball stickers on the side of the car. I said, yeah. He said, "It's closed, we're going to run a Formula 1 car." I said, "Yes, in the back." "Oh, okay, in you come." And so I get in there and I'm all nervous. And we pull down the back of the race transporter. I've got the car and I've already said to the organiser, "It's not going to run." I said, "It's just, we can put it, we wipe all the oil off and make it look pretty and stuff." It's just a different car, but no running gear in this one. We reversed it, just rolling it backwards off the trailer. I'm struggling on my own, and a couple of volunteers were helping for the. And there's a policeman standing next to me, an official-looking policeman, with a board. And he said, "What's this?" I said, "This is Sergio Perez's 2011 Sauber Ferrari. It's beautiful, isn't it?" He said, "Yeah, but it's not legal, is it?" I said, "No, it's not legal. No, it's okay. You can't drive on the road." He said, "Those tyres touch that tarmac, I'm impounding it." I was...
No way!
by which time I'd undone the ratchet straps and I was holding it on the rear wing. So we managed to... The Dublin police were quite good fun, but the London police weren't having any of it. So
you didn't get to have...
No, we rolled it out and sat there, and we managed to convince them that it was okay, we weren't going to drive it. But he was literally standing in front of the nose all the time saying this isn't going anywhere.
Goodness.
Yeah, great fun.
Well, I guess they've got to do their job.
Well, yes, yeah.
But unfortunately, at least it didn't get impounded.
No, it didn't. That was my main worry, was that if it got impounded, it would just disappear for 6 months.
Oh, no.
I couldn't afford to have that. But yeah, great fun.
So you not only get to drive these amazing cars, you own these cars, but you also create beautiful sculptures from pieces of the cars as well. So how did that come about? What gave you the idea to change something that I guess is very special in one way to then make it into a different kind of item?
Well, I'm very passionate about the way Formula 1 used to be. I have to be quite careful because we still work with them now. But the F1 the way it is now is very different from the V8 and V10 era. Everybody of my age grew up on a Sunday afternoon. We would have a roast dinner and then the Grand Prix would be on in the corner on BBC. And the viewer figures were astronomical because it was free to watch on the BBC, hence why all the sponsorship was so high. But the screaming noise of the V10s and everything is what we grew up with, where the passion, that's what really sparks excitement in Formula 1 for people of my era. And I just started collecting parts from the V8 and V10 cars. We had a few with the Benettons. We've still got some of those that were famous Renault V10 engine, some of the nicest noises in F1. And I spent in between trying to sell the cars, which is, you have 2 good days a year at work because you're trying to sell Formula 1 cars. You only sell 2 a year.
I was going to ask you about that because it seems very glamorous, but I guess it's quite a niche.
Very niche,
A very niche market, I guess, for your Formula 1 cars.
But to bring in something into the product range that we were marketing, something more affordable but unique. So we worked on polishing up the V10 exhausts, and in the majority of the new collection that's coming out next week, I've got a collection of 10 pieces that are all from, they call the golden era of F1 as the V10 era. So they're all V10 exhausts, polished and gold plated.
Wow.
So they look quite imposing, quite pretty things, full size. And they're real. I modified the end tip slightly to make them a slightly prettier shape because some of the V10 era ones are very, very long, too big to put on a coffee table or something. So I make it a nice flared tip on it, and then gold plate the inside on some of them, outside on others, and one of them has copper on the inside now, which we don't really use copper in Formula 1, but it's just a very pretty colour. And it allows people to have a piece of F1 history, and they're deliberately mounted and polished to look like a musical instrument because they are musical to us. They are a musical instrument. They actually made the noise. We had a little pop-up gallery in Woodbridge just before Christmas, and people would come in and look at it and put it in the window with the spotlights on it. Things when it was getting dark in the evening, it reflects very nicely. And people come and go, I used to watch the Benetton F1 team back in 1996, which is one of the exhausts I had there. That noise was amazing. I said, well, that's the actual piece. This isn't a replica. It's not a picture. It's not a homage to. It's when you one Sunday afternoon when you were watching the Benetton 196. That was the exhaust that made the noise that you remember. So and I'll tell anyone that will listen that that's original. So it's not a replica in any way. So we're stockpiling. I've managed to collect quite a few over the last 10 years, and we've got we're releasing collections at a time for different eras. A 1995 Schumacher pair that we've got at the moment as well, and yeah, they're very pretty.
Yeah.
I don't make 90% of it. But I just make them pretty. But I have lucky enough to have one celebrity client that bought one of the first ones, and gained some sort of reassurance from that people might buy more. So we ended up polishing and working with them. And slightly different configuration. Some of the early stuff is like a rib cage sort of shape, and now the single banks at a time, more sort of sentinel shape. So they're very organic.
There's one that I really caught my eye, and it's one that looks like a pair of hands.
Yes,
almost like.
Yeah. And it's amazing to see. It's a V8 set from the 2010 Sauber C29, I think, that's mounted like this.
Yeah.
And you can see all through the different eras of the Formula One, a completely different way with the exhausts take shape. And contrary to any road car, I think, the exhausts come out of the head and go up and out. Sometimes they even go forwards, up and out. So you never see an exhaust. Normally, the exhaust just points backwards. But in F1, the exhaust gases actually come forwards and back again, and then some of them go down to a blown diffuser to help with the aero. But they're just amazing shapes and beautiful things in their own right. And I just make them pretty enough to get past the wife, so you can have it at home.
Yeah. So did you have any kind of artistic background?
I studied art and landscape photography at Southampton University. I've never done a day's work in landscape photography. I don't think anybody's ever done a day's work in landscape photography, but I had a great time at Southampton University in the early 90s, studying photography. It kind of gives you an eye for what we call triangles. So pretty things generally are triangles. So we have to try and mount the pieces and things into a triangular shape. I'm being arty.
No, we love that. And I noticed that you took your beautiful pieces of art to the Milan art exhibition. So how was that? That must have been really...
Yeah, that was interesting.
Fantastic.
And they've been to all sorts of exciting places. Milan, I forgot the name of the gallery. It's one of the most famous galleries in the world. We had one there on display. We've been to LA. We've been to Miami Arts Festival. Had 4 pieces in Monaco for the Grand Prix this year. I was absolutely adamant that they were going to sell them in a fantastic shop called Art in Time, which is the owner of Chopard, the watch brand's private shop, right in the centre of Monaco. Wow. So I drove all the way down there in a rented 3-cylinder diesel Vauxhall Corsa. It was miserable.
Oh, no.
With 4 exhausts rattling, ding, 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 for 930 miles.
Oh gosh.
All the way down there, showed them off beautiful photographs, lots of comments on them. Didn't sell a damn thing.
Oh no.
I had to drive all the way back down and pick them back up again.
You were like, oh,
but it was beautiful. We've got some on display in Woodbridge at the moment. I've got one right in the centre of F1 Arcade in London, which is a sim racing restaurant. Really beautiful food and things they do there. I don't think arcade's quite the right word for it, but it's this sim racing place in St Paul's. There's a big one in the centre of the bar there, and there's others at the F1 exhibition. It's just closed in Madrid. It's reopening again soon in Vienna. So they get about in the right places, and we're pretty much the only people doing it. So there are some other pieces that pop up. I generally try and buy as many as I can that pop up for sale retail because they're a finite item. And I don't think we've got a fantastic guy, BC Fabs, that do some work for us on making tailpipes and stuff, and he could recreate completely from scratch a new set based on the 195 or the 196 V10 era ones. But we haven't gone down that route yet because I just don't think it's...
I guess it doesn't have that same appeal, does it?
It's the history of it.
And I find that with a lot of our classic cars as well. It's about the history. It's people remembering that their mum used to have one, or going out for day trips and things. It's that kind of nostalgic feel that you get from it. And I guess it's kind of the excitement that someone would feel knowing that, oh my gosh, that is actually from the Formula One car that I watched.
Yes,
you mentioned earlier. It's just, I guess, that bit of, I don't know, it's special, isn't it?
Yeah.
To know that's the only one as well.
It's an antique as opposed to a modern recreation. So, we have a very interesting company that working with us currently that have a layup carbon technique which is unique to them, and they're replicating one of the 2013 exhausts, the very last of the naturally aspirated ones, in carbon tube. And I'm quite up for that because it's a modern interpretation of it, and amazing to see it in the carbon. But but yeah, it's really all about the history, I think, that goes with them.
Definitely. And if any of our viewers who are watching now, watching this along, where if they could buy one of these or have a look at them just to see your artwork, where would be the best place for them to go?
If they're local to us, they're on display at the W Gallery in Woodbridge. There's 4 pieces in there, or everything else is on the website currently, a Vintage Formula website. I think we've got more coming up. There's a show that's not public yet, but will be in the UK, but towards the end of the year, where there's a big exhibition. So they're quite prominent places. Or there's one downstairs in the Chopard shop in on Bond Street. But I think you have to be invited to go and see that. Not to see that, but to be invited into the shop. So a big security guard on the door. You have to look like you can afford to go in.
Okay, so wear your best clothes if you want to go there, guys.
I don't think he let me in when I was carrying it down. You couldn't park right outside, so I was carrying the sculpture down, and I was still sort of knocking on the door, and there was just a big guy shaking his head. I was like, no,
Oh my goodness me, well,
credit check and walk in the door.
Well, there you go. So you can check on Vintage Formula on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, and Vintage Formula website, which I guess is www.vintageformula.com.
.com.
There you go. So if you want to have a look at Mike's amazing artwork, please do as well, because it is stunning. Check out those websites. And I also wanted to ask you about, so you did some bike work as well. Did you used to ride bikes, you mentioned?
I used to ride a lot of bikes, but I had an epiphany last, I think it was probably a midlife crisis actually, rather than an epiphany, last summer on the roads here, and I thought I'd find myself on a Saturday, if it's a weekend where I haven't got my boy, I'd go drop him off at his mum's or something like that, driving home, think, I'll take the bike out, and then I'd sort of look at it and think, actually I've put my leathers on, sit next to it, and I thought, I haven't got anywhere to go. I could just go out and ride around in circles, or I'd find myself at Felixstowe having a coffee on the beach or something and come home again, and I went off-road biking completely, but I've got rebuilding a Triumph Speed Triple as a track bike now, but yeah, I sold the ZZR and bought a convertible Mercedes that is currently broken.
Oh no, yeah, you mentioned that. Oh no. But anyway, thank you so much for coming in, and I don't know if have you been to this part of British Classic Cars before? Because I know you have been before.
Yes, the old building, it's fantastic, isn't it? It's beautiful.
Is there any cars that have caught your eye in here today?
Well, the ones behind the camera, even the beautiful Astons and Bentleys, but a British Leyland Telecoms van. See me in that.
It's a lot of fun, isn't it? It's very, very quirky. It's bright yellow as well, so nobody would miss you.
Yes, no, that's a good point. Yeah. We get the dog in the back. Or a buzz? Was it Buzz? No, you wouldn't know. It was long before your time. The Busby was the British Telecom's bird. Physically a bird that used to shout down the phone line or something. I don't remember. But it seems to remind me of those times in the 70s. That would be good fun.
But thank you so much for coming in, and thank you so much for chatting to me about all the exciting things that you've been up to. And we hope to see you maybe come in again soon, and I think it'd be amazing if we could come and see some of your art in person.
Yes, by all means, yeah, I'd love to.
And thank you so much.
Lovely, thank you.